In this video, I will explain the concept of a measurable learning objective. Let's get started. When we talk about measurable objectives, we're referencing to the observable actions that learners demonstrate during their learning processes. The first consideration of writing a measurable objective is to use an observable verb. Let's look at some examples. If an objective states, "Know the definition of ecology," is it measurable? The verb know is not observable. How do you know whether a learner knows or not? We need an observable behavior as an indicator. For example, if a learner can define ecology using their own words, then I can say that this learner knows the definition of ecology. The second example is similar. Understand the mechanisms that generate social capital. The verb understand is not observable, so that it's not measurable. We need to replace it with a behavioral indicator. For example, if a learner can explain the mechanisms, then I know that they understand them. Note that I also added using concrete examples to make the objective more specific. If the verb is observable, is an objective measurable? Well, the answer is not necessarily. Next, we need to check the object or the noun of the verb. Let's look at some examples. Here's the first example. Increase awareness of social justice issues in the current public education system. Is this objective measurable? Action verb increase is observable. For example, we can compare learners' performance in a pre-test and a post-test to see whether there is an increase. However, the object of the verb, awareness, is not observable. To measure awareness, you will need an observable behavior as the indicator. Here is an example. If my learners can identify a variety of social justice issues, then I know that they are aware of those issues. Note that I changed the verb in this objective as well, because in my course, being able to identify a variety of issues is the actual skill that learners must develop, no matter the number of issues the learners identified was increased or not. Let's look at another example. Demonstrate the ability to think critically about globalization. The verb demonstrate is technically observable. However, the object of the verb, the ability to think critically, is not measurable. Similarly, to measure the ability to think critically, we need an observable behavior as an indicator. For example, if learners can analyze both the positive and negative impacts of globalization on their own local economy, I can see that they developed the ability to think critically about globalization. Note that I also added on your local economy as a condition. This is the third element that we will discuss next. The third element of a measurable objective is providing a concrete context under which the desired behavior should be observed. Adding a concrete context or condition makes the objective more specific and therefore easier to measure. Let's look at some examples. The first objective states, examine current trends in information technology. Is it measurable? The verb examine can be too broad to measure. The objective does indicate what to be examined, but does not indicate how should a learner examine the trends. For example, if I chronically listed the trends in the past 10 years, I did examine the trends, but did I achieve this objective? It's hard to determine, isn't it? To make the objective more specific, we can add a condition to it. For example, learners will be able to examine the trends using a specific model that we introduce in the course. Now, the objective is easier to measure. Learners only achieve the objective when they correctly use the specific model in their examination. Let's see another example. Discuss social determinants of health. Similarly, the verb discuss can be a little too vague to observe. In the noun, Social determinants of health is also too broad to measure. For example, if I'm able to compile a list of social determinants, did I achieve this objective? To make this objective more specific and easier to measure, we can add a condition, a specific population in your local community. So this condition narrows down the scope of what learners should be able to discuss. We can also specify which aspects of social determinants of health learners are expected to discuss. For example, I want learners to be able to explain the mechanism of social determinants impacting health outcomes instead of what social determinants are. Conclusion. 3 elements work together to ensure a learning objective is measurable: an observable action verb, a specific noun or object of the verb, and a concrete context or condition.